Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. And this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. Lynn, what are we talking about today?
Oh, we are going to talk about trust, but not in the way that you might think. We're going to talk about trusting that the next step is there. And this actually is inspired by our chapter, You Got This. So one of my favorite chapters.
This is one of my favorite chapters that you wrote.
Yeah.
And I love it because of all the personal stories you tell in this chapter, but also because this is such an important part of being an entrepreneur. And I want you to talk about it a little bit because you did write a chapter in the book on this. And I want you to sort of continue on of the vein of what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get chicken skin even thinking about it. This was one of my favorite chapters because I feel like you said, the whole spirit of entrepreneurship and taking the actions, right, really is that trust. It's trusting that it's going to work out. It's trusting that that client's going to come. It's not without putting in the work. I definitely want to make sure that's really clear. And, you know, it's kind of crazy that we're having this interview right after last night I was at a networking event and it was all women and the topic was vulnerability. And I think vulnerability also comes with this particular side in some aspects of like putting yourself out there. So being vulnerable and trusting that you're going to receive or trusting that it's going to work out, trusting that that next step is going to appear. And, you know, obviously I love the stories about Rainbow Mountain that I use in the book and also the waterfall. I really love it because it's such a metaphor or analogy, both maybe for like business, like that whole trek up Rainbow Mountain, which I really shouldn't have done, guys. Like literally, I don't know if you know anything about hiking at high elevation or even being at high elevations. Like you're supposed to acclimate. And yes, I was in Bogota, which was 8,500 feet above sea level for 4 or 5 days prior. But literally I landed in Cusco, which is a beautiful town in Peru. And I can't wait to go back. I loved Cusco. I mean, I love a lot of places I go. And that day that I landed, I literally went to the tour people and I was like, okay, I want to see Machu Picchu and I want to see the Rainbow Mountain. And they're like, how long are you here for? I'm like, I just got here today and I want to see one tomorrow and one the next day. But, ma'am, we don't suggest that. No. Anyway, so Rainbow Mountain, you start, I think it was like 13,500 feet above sea level. And then you can go up to 17,500, but I think where I was at was around 16. But essentially like, yeah, the entrepreneurial kind of, comparison is like you're right there and I'm trusting myself and trusting my belief that I'm going to make it, right? And then setting benchmarkers and different things to help me, but just really like it's mind over matter. Like if I didn't trust my belief and trust myself to be able to make it and have the confidence too, like even like faking myself out to have the confidence to go to make that, like I could have literally backed down or even stepped out. And that's like the truth with entrepreneurship. So much shit is thrown at us. And sometimes we don't know which way is up and we just have to trust our instinct or trust like the patterns that have unfolded in front of us, or just trust that our coach or our mentor is guiding us in the right direction. And I'm not saying trust blindly. I think it's more the internal trust to be able to just like believe that if I leap, that next step is going to be there. And if I could just share one more thing, and then I'll turn it over to you. I feel like I can talk about this forever. Is like, I've literally, so you're learning me. And I did say on some of the other podcasts that, I definitely have my spidey senses and I'm very intuitive. Well, I surround myself with a lot of people who are, for several reasons. And I have, I've known, like, just to back up, I get these feelings of like, I know I'm on the cusp of something big, right? I know that something is changing and evolving in my life, in my business, etc. And one of my friends who's an Akashic record reader, look it up if you don't know what it is. We've befriended each other, and he's like, Lynn, it's not going to be this huge leap. It is like, you have to trust and jump onto that one ledge and then jump onto the next ledge. And then things are going to open up. And even though I can't see that ledge, I am jumping. And that's like even the true essence of going from working for the man to opening your own business. Like, that's like the biggest hurdle that a lot of entrepreneurs face, is that trusting that leap. Right. And so I'm definitely in those moments, but I've done my 3 leaps to the ledges. So I'm excited about that next big leap anyway. So yeah, lots around this topic, that you got this and trusting that next step.
I absolutely agree with you. I think a lot of the difficulty people have with even understanding how people start businesses is understanding there is this huge leap of faith, this risk that you take. And even if it doesn't really feel initially like you're falling, you are throwing yourself off a cliff. And just, it's the old adage of, what if I fall, my darling? What if you fly? I mean, it's this Absolutely. Unknown, but you have to trust yourself. You have to trust that you're going to have wings to fly. And it goes back to this quote that is one of my all-time favorites. And I don't, if anybody knows who actually said this, I would be amazed. But it's the idea that a bird landing on a branch does not,
Yes.
Fear that a branch is breaking, because it has the faith and trust in its own wings. Because that, and I even mentioned in the book that you are not dependent upon just the circumstances around you, because you have it in you. And even as a beginning, like a budding entrepreneur, you have to trust that you're going to get there, and you have to make those leaps. And again, like you said, not unfounded, not without a calculated risk and research done behind it, and being prepared for, in some cases, hardship. There is a lot of hardship sometimes when you're starting a business. It isn't all just these, and you look at these people who are like, oh, they're overnight success, but no. They make it look easy because they worked their butt off for 20 years. And then it became an overnight, quote unquote, success. And they make it look easy because they worked really, really hard to get there. I mean, I know people have said that about me. It's like, oh, it just comes easily to you. I'm like, well, not really. I had to work for 20 years and now it comes easily because I've had that experience, but it came from an initial risk taking. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that deep-seated, undeniable trust in themselves that they can take those leaps and take that fear and do it because they know that the outcome they're going for is worth more and is more likely to happen, because you have to put yourself out there and you have to trust yourself, because there's nobody, and particularly in like a solopreneur environment, there's nobody else that you can really trust, because you're going to have haters. There's always going to be somebody who's more interested in status quo than on the possibility of your dream and your ambition. So you have to trust yourself, because even if you have a lot of support from your immediate family, from your friends, there's always going to be those people who are like, be safe, stay with us here in the status quo, like stay with us in the status quo where it's safe and get a job from 9 to 5. And there's nothing wrong with having a job and having that. I mean, there are a lot of pros to working for somebody. Mm-hmm. However, if that's not who you are, you have to trust that you can do it. And you have to accept that there is going to be a leap there. There is going to be a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk, but the reward
is huge,
is worth it. It's huge.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I was thinking, as you were speaking, of like, what happens when we don't trust that next step is there, is that we do end up staying in a complacency or mediocrity. And even more so, like if I wouldn't have, for the waterfall, for those of you that have not read the book yet, download our book, buy our book on Amazon. It's awesome. But I talk about like going through this forest hike here in Thailand, got to see the coolest flower that is like really rare flower, Rafflesia or something like that. I can never pronounce the name. I always like get my tongue tied. Anyway, but one of the things with the group of friends I was with is like they wanted to see waterfalls. And I love waterfalls, but I was also from Hawaii. I saw a lot of waterfalls, like, let's be honest. But this person that out of our group that really wanted to see it, like they had not seen a lot. So first of all, we hiked up and down like many mountains, which we did not realize, but I like to hike when I'm not injured. I actually really miss hiking. And then I hear the water. We hear the water with our guide, and we get to, by the way, our guide didn't speak much English, but we get to the waterfall. I'm like, oh, it's great. And I look up and I see no water, but I hear water falling. And I look down and I'm like, oh shit, we got to go down. And I'm afraid of heights. And so I remember like, just really like convincing myself, first of all, and like looking at my group of friends and being like, we got to go now. Otherwise I am walking back the 4 hours that we came in, because, it's so easy to turn around. But first of all, I trusted my instinct and my gut. I just did it. And I am more of a plow through type of mentality sometimes. And in this case, it served me. So I plowed through. I did not think. I took the thought process out of it. I made sure that all I had to focus on was the next step. And I think that that's really important too sometimes, because we can be paralyzed at looking at the whole journey. And for a second, I was like, oh, I have to hike down 100 meters. I don't know what that is in feet. Amanda, you're the smart one.
I don't do math. We talked about this. I don't do math. I do calculators. I will look it up on my phone. I will find the calculation for that, but
it's freaking high, people. And all I focused on was that next step. And I think that that's really truthful in life. Like even I can remember personal times where I was going through such a hard time, and all I had to do was put one foot in front of the other and trust that was going to be okay. Right. And that was going to get me to where I want to go, is going to get me to the other side. But I think that is, and not, but that is what helps us make progression. That's help us. Also, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have been able to experience what I experienced. Like it was to be able to see the beauty in the journey. We have to be on the journey. And
absolutely,
if we don't trust that next step is going to be there. And sometimes you trust the next 10 steps. Sometimes you just trust that next step. And sometimes you trust to the destination, whatever said destination is. But it's just having that trust and believing in yourself to do that, and like just doing it.
Are you sure it was 100 meters? Because if I'm doing the math correctly, that's like 320 feet or like 325 feet. Is that right?
It was 100 meter high waterfall. Now, I will say, yeah, that's what I felt. However, I will say it wasn't a straight drop. Like in Hawaii, we have Akaka Falls, which is pretty damn high. I don't even know how high Akaka Falls is, but it's huge and it's a straight drop. So this wasn't a straight drop. It was more tiered. However, doesn't matter if it's tiered or a straight drop. Looking down that, I wanted to pee myself. I was like,
surprised you didn't. I think a good peeing of myself would have been totally justifiable. That's pretty high. I mean, if I'm doing the math right, I'm not a math person, but if I'm doing the math right, that's like 320 something feet.
I'm sweating thinking about it now. But at the end, what was funny is my friends were like, I couldn't believe you. Like you were fearless. And we all slipped and fell. And actually, our guide fell and gashed his head open at almost at the end. That was, thank God he made it all the way through, because I don't know how we would have gotten out of the damn rainforest.
Well, you would have gotten out. That's perseverance.
We would have figured it out.
I mean, I'm not saying you're going to cut your own arm off or anything, but you would have figured it out.
Just to kind of wrap this up, after we finished, by the way, my friends were like, holy cow, you just went, I was so impressed. You just did. And I was like, yeah, because I trusted that next step. And I was also, the guide was in front of me. I made sure I was behind the guide because I didn't want anybody hesitating. right? So I wanted to make sure that I could do it at my own pace without being affected by my group of friends. And so like I was watching exactly where he was going, but I was also calculating, okay, what's the next best step for me? Sometimes it wasn't the same because I have big ass feet versus my little tiny Thai guy. and you know, so yeah, I was just trusting that next step and doing it almost without even thinking, and getting into a rhythm. But to make that story even funnier is not only do we get down, but it was another, I want to say 4-hour hike or so, because it was about a 10-hour hike altogether. We had to hike down the stream, across a river, and then about another hour before we actually came to a trail that we would have. And then the trail itself was about maybe an hour of the rest of the hike. So we hiked down the stream, sometimes through it, across a river. We had to like get into a river, and not a still river either, like a river that was moving very fast. Oh, it was so much fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But you know what? It kind of reminds me, and this is not really necessarily that it reminds me, because I've had some instances that it kind of reminded me of personally, but from a business standpoint, I think that so many entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs that I've met actually get to the point where they look over the waterfall, so to speak, and they know they're like almost there. And then they doubt themselves and they pull back and they have to grab all the way down like you would have had to. And then they realize once they get to the bottom, like, oh crap, I have to go all the way to the top again. And so I think it's interesting that I've so many of the people that I've coached or worked with or just talked to, it's like they get to that point and they've trusted themselves this far. And then suddenly, for whatever reason, they stop trusting themselves. And I don't know if it's like an imposter syndrome that comes in, which I mean, obviously we touched on before, or if it's some outside force or family member or a friend that's creating that doubt for them, but they'll get just there and they're just about to really make progress. And then they back out, and then you're like, they stop what they're doing, or they close their business, or you're like, you were so close. Like if you just stuck it out. And it's really hard sometimes to understand the difference between, you know, like beating a dead horse, like you've gone so far and like, there's really no point in sticking it out, versus, you know, like give the horse a rest and like, let's get back on it, 'cause it's not actually dead yet. Like there's such a difference there. And I think it's really hard to determine sometimes when you're in it to notice the difference.
Absolutely. Actually, I was chuckling because I remember in my young years, when I would drive hoopties back when I was a teenager, and I had one of my friends' dads would help me fix the car, and I would actually help. I would fix the car, change brakes, change oil, do this, do that. He was mechanical, and he's like, Lynn, and I heard this throughout my life, Lynn, like sometimes like you're you're throwing money away. Right. And I think that that's really important, because I kept like trying to fix my hoopty. And at some point, you know, I didn't see like, to me, it was more affordable to pay a little bit of money, but in the long term, I was actually paying a lot more than getting a newer car, saving that, or figuring out some kind of source. And sometimes you have to make do, right? So, you know, one example is if you're having cash flow issues in your business, like sometimes you have to make minimal payments until that big job. You know, I saw this a lot with the alarm company. If we didn't budget correctly, and depending on other jobs that we had going, I mean, we would get a percentage up front, but sometimes we had to like make minimal payments or extend our credit with the vendors or whatnot to be able to do that. And I think that that's really important. Like you can adjust the steps as you go, but don't back out fully unless you assess the whole situation. Like, is it really, if you're going to give it up altogether, is it really worth it? Or if you're not going to give it up altogether, are you going to have to like come to that point again anyway and do all of that work again? Like, are you just repeating yourself? Like, and I think that that's what the point at the top of the day. I'm like, dang, I'm okay hiking back, but if I didn't overcome this fear, like I'm not going to enjoy that next step and that journey. And I think it's also, in addition, and then I'll let you start wrapping it up, because I can't believe we're already almost at 20 minutes. That like, even though I got down that waterfall, we still had some chaos to go through to like enjoy the beauty. However, like going through the river was another moment. Like, are you effing kidding me? I gotta like go through a raging river. I'm gonna be swept away. Or my tiny Thai guy is going to be swept away because I'm a lot bigger and heavier than he is. And like, still like facing that adversity, right? I think like that trust aspect really comes into play, that next step is going to be there, because there's always going to be adversity. There's always going to be things that are going to happen. Just do the assessment and like get through it in ways that obviously it's going to serve you and that's going to be beneficial to you, but trusting yourself to be able to like make it through too, not just trusting that next step. So
yes. So for action steps, we always like to end on an action step. So for me, I think it's important when you are at that precipice where you feel like if anything else goes wrong, I might as well just call a lawyer and file bankruptcy and the world is ending in my business. You start to get in that spiral. It's really important that you stop the spiral, take a step back and really assess all the things that have led you there. Are you actually in a position where you do need to get out? Is the intuition telling you to get out because that's the right thing to do? Or are you afraid of the next big step you're about to make? And if you don't know, and if you can't figure it out, it's really okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for an outside opinion, whether it's someone in your personal executive team, whether it's a coach, whether it's a financial advisor. Like, there are people you can ask to help you assess that. It doesn't have to be something you do on your own. But in the end, trust your gut, because even if the answer is close up shop, or the answer is take out a loan for 50 grand, whatever the issue is, trust yourself, because you do know the answer. You've already gotten this far ahead, and there are reasons that your mind or your heart or whatever is telling you something contradictory, but you actually do know the answer. You just have to trust that answer is going to get you to the destination that you are looking to go to.
Absolutely. And just one other thing that I would add, because you talked about more the adversity side, I would also say, like, even just now with my Akashic record, he's like that ledge. And it wasn't adversity. It was actually me saying yes to spending money and investing in certain aspects to be able to go forward. So it's not always that trusting in adversity or in troublesome, or it's also like trusting that if I take this leap, it's going to get me quicker to point B or point A or wherever point you're going to. It's in the right direction of where I'm supposed to be going. So just trusting that next step is going to be there. And just keep in mind, when it's in alignment with your bigger purpose, with the vision, with the mission, and really what you're supposed to be doing, your intuition will be stronger. So really just checking yourself, is it in alignment with where I want to go, who I am, who I want to be, or who I'm being, right? That will help you be a bit more centered in your decision. Period. In the trust.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we are at time. We want to respect your time. And we have plenty more to say on trusting yourself, because it's something that we implement every day in our businesses and lives. But if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. We will love to respond to your specific questions. But in the meantime, please subscribe, follow, like all the things, our podcast, and let us know if you have questions.
Absolutely.
All right, Lynn.
Now let's get after it.